Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Hi, my name is Carolyn Greene, and this is my story. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm the fourth child of 6. My mom and dad both had full-time jobs, but they also did other work, having after-hour joints, running numbers, and things like that. I watched a lot of people come in and out of our home that drank over the weekends and had problems in their home, and I never wanted to be like that. I caught my brother and 2 of my brothers drinking alcohol one day, and I was going to tell on them, and they told me I better not tell, and they convinced me into trying and saying, "You just scared, you just can't do what we do." And that was always a challenge for me when they said that you a girl or you couldn't do certain things. And so I tried it, and the burning came down, and it was all burning in my throat and everything. But after that, I felt invincible. I felt boisterous. I felt that I could say whatever I wanted to say. I would sneak drinks because I didn't want my mom to get drunk. My mom would drink a lot, and when she drank, she would get sick. And I didn't like for my mom to be sick. So I figured if I drink the liquor, that it wouldn't be there, or if I put water in there. And I became a little drug dealer at an early age, running to get marijuana and stuff for other people. And so that started my journey. At the age of 13, the next door neighbor raped me. I never told anybody about that. And my drinking increased, my marijuana uses increased. I was good in school. I was a straight A student. My grades started falling down. At that point, my mom was concerned. I was disobeying the school rules. I was cutting classes, and I was fighting in school. And my mom was like, "What is going on? What is going on with you?" She didn't know that I had started drinking. By the age of 15, I started sneaking out of the house. I felt alcohol gave me this courage. And then I would come home. My mom got tired. She would lock the door and lock me out. And then I learned how to break in the house. And so the whoopings and the punishments that I was getting, they was not enough to stop me. They were only things to make me drink more. And I would drink more and use drugs. At the age of 17, I did manage to graduate from school. Right after graduation, I had a boyfriend I was talking to. He made me feel as I was the top of the world. And he wanted to be intimate with me. And I was scared. I never told him or nobody else about the molestation and the rape that I had went through. I wanted to tell him, but I didn't tell him. And he wanted to just go play basketball. So he was playing basketball, and I was so upset. And he didn't want to leave, and he told me to take his car, and I wouldn't take his car. I was so angry with him, I started to walk. And as I was walking down the street, I seen 4 guys sitting on a rail. I felt scared, so I walked in the street. I said, I'm gonna walk in the middle of the street. And when I looked up again, the 4 guys was gone. And I kept walking, and as I walked, a guy was coming toward me, and he pulled out a shotgun and put it in my face and dared me to move. And then there was a guy behind me, and then a car pulled up. It was 2 guys in the car, and they kidnapped me. They kidnapped me and kept me for 3 days, and they had their way with me. I was so hurt. They dropped me off in front of my house on a Sunday morning, and I go in the house, and my mom was so angry with me. And she said, "Since you done graduated from school, you think you can do whatever you wanted to do." But I was so hurt. I felt so dirty. I felt so useless, worthless, that I didn't care what she was saying. And she was gonna put me on punishment. And I went upstairs to call my girlfriend, and I told her, I said, "Please tell my mom that I spent the night over your house." And she said, "But you've been gone for 3 days. And I said, "I can't tell you what happened." She said, "Tell me, please tell me." And when I told her what happened, she said, "I gotta tell my mom." She said, "Because you need to go to the hospital, and you need to make sure you're okay. And they took me to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, they called the police, and I was so scared. They was trying to get a description of the people, but I went into a shock after they did the rape thing. And I ran out the hospital. But they did call me and tell me that I didn't have any sexual transmitted diseases. And I thought that was the end of it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get through this. Lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, they called and told me I was pregnant. And I was pregnant with my first child. I was scared. I didn't know what to do, but we were raised to believe in God, and I was scared to abort it. I wanted to have it because I wanted something to love. I didn't know who to tell. I couldn't tell my mom. I couldn't tell my family. And so I hid my pregnancy. At the 8th month, my mom found out because my brother got married, and I had to wear a dress that had a big belt around it that showed my stomach. And as I walked down the aisle, I could hear my mother, "Is that girl pregnant?" I knew that that was the end and the beginning of chaos. I ended up having my first child, and I tried very hard. I worked 2 jobs, I got a car, and I wanted to actually just be a good mom. Then I met this guy, and I thought he was the answer to my prayers. He was tall and handsome and had a great job until I moved in with him. When I moved in with him, he introduced me to cocaine. He was very controlling and emotionally abusive. He wasn't physical abuse. He wanted to dictate my every move, wouldn't allow me to visit my friends. And then one day I made up my mind to leave him. I figured I could do this without a man. I don't need a man. I wanna get my life back on track. And I went to college, working 2 jobs, trying to raise my children. And so now I got my own place. I'm partying and letting people in that I wanna let in, and enjoying both sides of the fence, the career side and the party side. So now I'm doing cocaine, I'm doing marijuana, I'm doing pills and alcohol. And I became my best customer in those pills because I needed the pills to go to work, take care of my children, and to party. And I didn't know how I was gonna do it until I started taking the pills. And the pills became another part of my addiction. I met another guy in a dope house that appeared to have a lot of money. And I said, that's the answer, that's the key. That's who I need in my life. And found out that he too was physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. Before I moved in with him, I lost the place that I was living in. I ended up losing that place because I quit my job. But I was so into selling drugs and running into people who sold drugs and chasing the money. And then when I met this guy, he would supply my drug need. And by him being abusive, I didn't want to stay there. We would fight every day. Every day we would fight until I found out that I was pregnant. But he wanted me to keep the baby. It was his first. And even in the midst of being pregnant with her, I continued my drug use. I was sick. Half the time I wouldn't eat, going through pregnant emotions and drug withdrawals and all kind of stuff. And going into the hospital to have this baby was like a blessing because it got me away from that guy. However, I ended up going back to this guy because he didn't want his baby in a shelter. And he promised me he was going to get a house. And we did. We did find a house. And so one day I go back to the house and I took my 2 sons with me. And we were there and we got into an argument and a fight. My oldest son kept screaming and hollering. And I looked around and he had found a gun. He cocked the trigger and I begged him to, don't shoot it. I said, give mommy the gun, give mommy the gun. He said, mommy, let's go, let's go. And he forced that man down in the basement and locked the door. And he said, mommy, let's go. And I took the gun from him, but I wouldn't leave. And 'cause I wouldn't leave my son, took his brother and they ran out the house and they ran to my mother's house. And that's when Children and Family Services got involved. And I continue on looking for someone to save my life. And it was always in a man. And before I met this other man, I was in the streets, drinking heavily, day in, day out. Had to wake up with a drink and a drug. And I would find myself on the street corners on Cedar Avenue, walking all day and all night, nothing to eat, staying in abandoned houses, getting high. I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about nobody. Didn't nobody care about me. So I met this guy, and my girlfriend introduced me to him, and I thought I would be able to get my life back in order, selling drugs and being able to just maintain and get my children back, not knowing that my habit got worse. I went over his house one day and somebody knocks on the door. He talked to him and he come back and he said, I done told people about coming over here without calling. And when the guy come back, he had somebody with him and they robbed us. They beat him, tied us up, and I was able to squeeze out and I untied him and he was able to get up and get his gun and he shot out the door and he killed the wrong person. Police was everywhere. And this is only by the grace of God that when they came in the house, I hid under some clothes. They couldn't find me. And the man ended up going to jail and doing some time, some big time. And so then after that, I had another child. And I met this guy who I thought would save me again. This guy didn't use no drugs. I moved in with him. It was good for about a week, and then I would go disappear. And when I come back, he'd take me back with open arms. And one day he found out what I was doing and told me I needed to stop. And I told him I couldn't stop. And he said, I'll help you stop. He brought me home. I was a housewife for about 2 months and found out I was pregnant, and that was it. I didn't want to be pregnant, and the more I showed, the more people stopped giving me drugs. So I tried to abort my baby. I wanted the drugs more than I wanted her. So I tried to use a hanger to abort her. Not one time, 3 times. The only way I'm gonna stop is if I die. And I stood on the corner and I screamed as loud as I could, if there is a God, come down here and save my life. And that was the beginning of my recovery. From then, God stepped in. A lady pulled up, I'm pregnant. And I asked her to take me to the hospital. The doctor asked me, what are you gonna do today? I said, I want some help. He said, you ain't ready. And a social worker came to me and she asked me what was wrong, and I told her how wrong my life was. And she said she was gonna help me. A few hours go by and the social worker come back and said, Miss Greene, won't no hospital take you. They say you high risk, they can't take you. She said, but I'm gonna keep trying. She come back and she said, the only place I can get you is the psych ward. She said, because I believe you got some mental health disorders going on. They locked me up in the psych ward. When I woke up, it was 3 days later. They said I had 14 different drugs in my system, but something changed. Something changed in that psych ward. I met a nurse that I was talking to, and she said I would cuss her out every day. And she made me watch this video about what drugs do to a baby. I couldn't do nothing but cry. I couldn't do nothing but call out to God. I couldn't do nothing but say, I don't want this to happen to my baby. After I watched that video, they enrolled me into Rosary Hall treatment. I stayed there for 28 days, and they ended up putting me in a women's home, a women's Christian home. Another miracle happened in my life. I met some women that taught me how to care for myself and how to care for my babies. They told me I had to go to AA meetings and I had to go to church. I didn't care where they told me I had to go. And one thing about AA that I love is that I found people just like me, but they had something I didn't have. They gave me hope. I was going to meetings and they would say, couldn't no babies come in here? And one of them AA women say, you go in the meeting, I'm gonna sit out here with your baby, because you need this meeting. They said, get a sponsor. And they encouraged me. And they gave me support. And I thank God for AA. And I started looking around the room and saw people that I knew in the street. Never knew they had been abused and mistreated just like me. And I did what they told me to do. And I got to places that I wanted to get to in life. The only reason they didn't take this last baby from me, because when she came forth, they told me they was gonna take this baby from me. But she came through and she had no drugs in her. I had her 31 days. October the 14th is the day that I got sober. And I had her November the 16th. There was no drugs in her system. They had no reason to take that baby, even though they had my other children in the custody of the Children and Family Service. That gave me hope because I had prayed and asked God. I said, God, please don't let this baby suffer from all the stupid things that I did, even trying to abort her, even taking all of these drugs. Don't let nothing happen to this child. I fought for my children. I kept going back before the judge and they kept telling me, do a parenting class, go to treatment. I said, I finished treatment, do another treatment. They made me do an outpatient and aftercare treatment. They made me do 2 parenting classes. I did one in the church. They told me it wasn't acceptable. They made me do another one, and I did what they told me to do. And I went in there, and the judge said, we're going to give you another chance. Gave me another court date. When I went back for that court date, the judge that I had got sick. Only God did this, and it was a new judge. The social worker painted my picture so mean. She said she done lost these kids. She's a drug addict. She this, she that. She ain't never been clean. And I think I had been clean about 6 months when I started trying to get my children back. And the other judge said he wasn't going to read my file, but he wanted to know, was there anything that I had to say? And I told him that I appreciated the system stepping in and taking care of my children when I could not take care of my children myself. And the social worker kept saying that I couldn't have my children. And my mother finally stood up and said she can have her children. And that was the best thing, again, that happened to me, was regaining custody of my children. From there, I continued to stay sober. It was a transition for my children as well. They had been with my mom. They've been in the system, in and out of different places. It was a lot. They hated me. My daughter used to tell me how she used to sit in the window in the bathroom and hope that I would come back. She would look out the bathroom window, and some days she would see me out there on the streets. My sons, they were so upset with me. They just didn't want to have anything to do with me. But the good thing is we went through counseling. In the midst of that, I was crying out to God. And I ended up joining Calvary Hill Missionary Baptist Church. And there I felt a lot of warmth and a lot of love. I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. And I walked in them doors and I started off picking up paper. And then I was on the usher board. Then I started working with the children in the candy stripe, helping the children to learn about being a nurse in the church. Then I was in the choir. And next thing I know, God called me to preach the gospel. And so that's what I do. I own my own business, Green Acres, counseling and group services. The program of Green Acres remind me so much of the people that was in my life and what I wanted to be. Everybody in Green Acres had some kind of issue, but they learned to live together and work together in order to have harmony in their little small town. And so my agency is a counseling service for women walking in change. I opened that up in 2018, and I'm so grateful for that. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, that's my story.